The Vandy Boys are your SEC tournament champions. They are in Hoover, and they are now hosting the Nashville Regional, which includes Wright State, East Tennessee, and Louisville. Our good friend Chris Lee of Vanderbilt 247 Sports and Southeastern 16 will join me right after this open for a review of the Vandy Boys in Hoover and a look ahead to the Nashville Regional right here on this edition of the Stingray Show.
Hi, this is Tim Brando with a reminder. Those of you on Tide 100.9, look out. You're about to feel the buzz of Stingray.
And with that, I want to welcome you inside the Nashville Regional Preview Show that features the Vanderbilt Commodores, who are your SEC tournament champions. And I do need to mention that the Vanderbilt and Nashville Regional is paired up with the Hattiesburg Regional. So whichever teams come out of both of those will be facing off in the Super Regionals. And to give us a review of Vandy's run to the championship in Hoover and a preview of this regional, we are about to be joined by our good friend, Southeastern 16's own Chris Lee. Chris, how are things with you up in Nashville as the Vandy Boys brought home another hardwood trophy?
Busy, but this is what we live for this time of the year, so no complaints.
So, Chris, go ahead and break down briefly the run that Vanderbilt made there in Hoover.
Well, they gave up 3 runs, didn't make an error, hit for a little bit of power, certainly had timely hitting, got great starting pitching, great bullpen performance. Just hard to find a lot of flaws with Vanderbilt other than maybe would have liked a little bit more offense against Ole Miss. But, left some guys on base, missed some opportunities. But other than that, it was almost a flawless performance for Vanderbilt in Hoover, which is really hard to do anywhere. And it's really hard to do in what I think is the toughest conference we've ever seen in college baseball.
Now, Chris, I do want to bring this up, and I hate to do it, but the last time that Vanderbilt won the SEC tournament, they completely burned through their pitching, and they were 2 and done and did not even get out of their own regional. Should Vanderbilt be concerned about that this time around?
Well, 2 things. The last time they did it before that, they won the national title, so there's that one too. But look, it's a much different format. They had not only did they have 3 games instead of 4 or 5 or whatever it was then. That's like a regular weekend. Like we don't ever go, hey, is so and so not fresh for the NCAA, for the next weekend because they pitched a lot of guys last weekend. It was as close to normal as you can get, except you actually get another day's rest. So I don't think it's a factor at all. And even if it was, like they run ruled Tennessee. So you picked up 2 more innings there that you're going to have to pitch as well.
So, Chris, before we dive into the regional, there was a stat that was brought up by the SEC network during the Tennessee game. During the non-conference with the first 25 games, Vanderbilt hit 20 home runs. Then they got into SEC play, and they doubled their home run performance to 40. What do you attribute that big jump of home runs going from non-conference to the SEC?
I don't think it's just 1 or 2 things, right? For some of it is lineup construction. Like first of all, Brody Johnson, who's their best. Brody Johnson and Braden Holcomb are their best 2 power hitters. Yep. Johnston started his year with a hand injury. Oh, by the way, so did Mike Mancini, who hit 15 last year at James Madison and didn't have but 1 until I think a couple of weeks ago. He's got 3 now. So you have 2 guys that started the year with hand injuries, which kind of kill your power. Yeah. Then you had Braden Holcomb, who didn't crack the lineup probably till halfway through the conference season. They were experimenting with some other things. He wasn't hitting. So now you got 3 healthy power bats in the lineup every day that were neither healthy before or not available. I think the other thing, and you know this as a meteorologist, man, how many times did you text me saying, Chris, big storms headed your way?
Yeah.
Nothing depresses the traveling of a baseball like rain and cold weather.
Right.
We got a lot of that. In fact, we haven't hit 90 degrees yet in May here, but it's gotten hotter than it's been. So it's been a very cool and damp spring. I think that's part of it too. So I think those are probably the biggest things. The other thing is they've talked about changing their approach. Driving the ball the other way has been a big thing. If you're trying to pull everything, there might be a little bit more swing and miss. If you're willing to really get a good swing on the ball but hit it the other way, I know it's harder to hit it out. But the ball jumps off the bat in college baseball like it hasn't in a while. Those are probably the three things that I would circle first.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm doing a bunch of stuff, dude. All right, here we go.
I know how that goes, man.
So, Chris, let's go on ahead and dive into the Nashville Regional that is on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And let's begin with the Friday matchup of East Tennessee State versus Louisville. And East Tennessee State comes in with a record of 41 wins. And that game begins at 1 o'clock on Friday. Break that game down for us, please.
Well, I think this might be a case where the 2 is actually, or the 3 is actually better than the 2.
Mm-hmm.
East Tennessee State didn't play a ton of great teams, but let's not forget they were the team that snapped Tennessee's 20-game losing streak or whatever that is to start the season. That was no small thing. I'll get you the exact number because I've got it in front of me. Okay. They had 116 home runs. They had 4 guys hit 16 or more. Now, I think the ball gets out in their park.
Yeah.
And they also stole 89 bases and only got called 8 times. So really, really tough offensive team to match up with. Pitching wise, not a great pitching staff, but certainly not a bad one. They've got a couple of guys. It's all about pitching, right? I don't know if they'll say Brady Frederick, who's their ace for a game 2 potentially against Vanderbilt. My guess is they might. I'd have to go back and look up how they did that during the season. Right. But I think they've got the bats to get through Louisville in game 1. Louisville doesn't really have an ace. The closest thing it's got to it is Patrick Forbes, who was fine, had a 4.80 ERA. And Louisville plays in a little bit of a hitter-friendly park, so that distorts the numbers. But I just don't think it's a Louisville team that pitches like Dan McDonald's teams have in the past. The hitting is fine. They're probably more of a threat to steal bases than they are hit home runs, although they had 72 home runs. But Lucas Moore stole 46. Alex Alicea and Zion Rose stole 29 each. I think it'll be, can Louisville get on base and can ETSU control the running game? But I think ETSU might be the better team here.
So, Chris, let's move to the nightcap of Wright State versus the Vandy Boys, the home team. Break that game down for us, please.
Yeah, speaking of offense, it's another team that can really get on base. Wright State had a .424 on base percentage as a team. It hit 88 home runs. It will steal bases. It stole 122 of them. Now, the pitching, again, is the question. Not an obvious ace for them. So I think for Vanderbilt, it'll just be keeping the ball in the yard, keeping guys off base. Tim Corbin has said, I'm willing to give up a solo home run. I just don't want to give up a lot with men on base. That's one thing Vanderbilt's been pretty good at doing. It's a very left-handed oriented lineup. Vanderbilt's probably going to throw lefty J.D. Thompson in game 1. He's been great in that park. So I give Vandy the advantage. But when you're up against a team that gets on base and can hit home runs, a lot of stuff can happen if you're off a little bit. So it's not a slam dunk for Vanderbilt here on Friday, but I think they win.
And so for those of you that are interested in this matchup or are going to the game, Vanderbilt and Wright State first pitch is tentatively around 5 p.m. on Friday. All right, so Chris, if it happens the way that you expect it to, you've got Vanderbilt versus East Tennessee State. Did those 2 match up in the non-conference during the midweek during the season?
They did not. In fact, the only
Okay.
team Vanderbilt played in this region was Louisville. It lost to Louisville in a one-run game late
Okay.
in the season. I think that was maybe right before Vanderbilt went to Knoxville.
Okay. So, Chris, break down the potential of East Tennessee versus Vanderbilt, please. And that would be on Saturday.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, East Tennessee State, a team that hits a lot of home runs. So that's going to where you have to be careful. They steal some bases, and they're very efficient at it. They don't strike out an alarming amount, 18% as a team. They walk a little bit, hit the ball pretty hard. So I think it's just going to be Vanderbilt needs to make sure its pitching is in good shape. This is not a team in East Tennessee State that's really lefty heavy out of the bullpen. They've got really one guy in Derek McCarley that they could throw against lefties. So I think that could be an issue against a pretty balanced lineup. I just think everything lines up for Vanderbilt to win. But, all these teams that they're playing are going to bring a little something to the table that can be a challenge if you're off your game, and that'll be what Vanderbilt's up against.
Okay. So, like we've talked about earlier, or I mentioned, Vanderbilt and Nashville is paired up with Hattiesburg. Briefly, give us your thoughts on the Hattiesburg Regional that does include Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, your teams in that are going to be also, in addition to those two, Miami and Columbia.
Yeah,
Columbia's pitching is awful. I don't see them as a threat to really beat Southern Miss. They do hit a little bit, and I just think Miami is typically Miami good.
right.
So it did play a tough schedule, and sometimes that translates. But I think to me, it's a two-team race between Southern Miss and Alabama. Alabama just played teams so tough into the weekend.
Yeah,
To me, it's Tyler Fay was a pretty good opener for them, and I don't know if they'll use him in that spot, um, or how they'll structure their pitching. I think Riley Quick gives him a chance against anybody, and Zane Adams is a really, really good guy to have in your rotation, not to mention your three. I think it's going to be up to pitching for Alabama. I think Justin LeBron's going to have to play better. I watch him. I feel like he's a great player, super, super talented. My goodness, his instincts. I watched him at Hoover, and his talent is off the charts, but he's a kid who's pressing. He's dropping ground balls hit to him. I think he's got to maybe get out of his own head if that's the issue. And I think their bullpen, Osmer and Myers, have been
yeah.
really good. No, they need Heiberger or some of those other supporting guys to step up. But my sneaking suspicion is Alabama is going to get out of this, and we'll see a rematch of Vandy, Alabama, and Nashville, which was a dandy of a series first time through.
So, Chris, my final thing as we sit here before regionals and super regionals, you cover Vanderbilt on a regular basis for Vandy 247. In your opinion, what is the ceiling for this baseball team?
I think they could win the whole thing. I'm
Okay.
not sure that they are. I think and I'll look it up. I think LSU was on the other side of the bracket from them. I think they got a little bit fortunate that a lot of the SEC teams did draw that other side of the bracket. So maybe it's a little bit easier for them to get through. But, I mean, the pitching, the way that it's structured, and here's the thing, it's not just how your team is, it's the venue you're playing in.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt's playing in one of the better pitcher parks around. The ball can get out a little bit. The wind has been blowing out a lot at Hawkins Field lately. I think if you're Vanderbilt, you prefer that not to happen when you're built around pitching and defense more than you are power. But, and then when you get to the postseason, it's in Omaha where those conditions get even better for you. So I think I like their setup. I think they can get to Omaha and win some games and maybe win all, maybe come down with the whole thing when they're done.
Dude, wouldn't that be something if back-to-back national championships came from the state of Tennessee? Tennessee was last year, and who knows, it could be the Vandy Boys again this year.
Yeah, and certainly that would not be a scenario that anybody expected. If you said, 6 weeks ago the national champions are going to come out of the volunteer state, I think everybody would have jumped to one conclusion. I think now they might jump to another.
Yeah. So, Chris, look, man, Thank you, as always. Enjoy covering the Nashville Regional. They're at home for you, and we would love to catch up with you next week when we can talk about where Vanderbilt potentially could be playing in the Super Regional, because once again, they are matched up with the Hattiesburg Regional.
Yeah, thank you, Stingray. It's always fun to join you.
Okay. So, guys, that is going to wrap up once again the Nashville Regional Preview Show. Hope you guys have enjoyed it there with Chris Lee breaking down that regional. And we are going to do a preview of the Hattiesburg Regional right here on the YouTube channel. So make sure you look for that, because both of them are paired up. And we will catch you next time right here on the Stingray Show.